Jabu, thank you so much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But before we go into leadership, can you tell us a little bit where you're from and where did you grow up?
Okay. I come from a small town just outside of Johannesburg called Boksburg. Grew up in Boksburg, but I spent a lot of my childhood with my grandparents, actually, both sides. So I spent a lot of time with my mother's mother in Orlando West, Soweto, and my father's mom in Vosloorus in the East Rand. So that's briefly where I grew up. I'm the first of three. I've got two younger siblings. But I also grew up very close to what we call cousins. My cousins have always been my brothers and sisters. So it was quite a large household, large family, typical big Zulu family. And that's just a sort of brief of where I come from. Yeah.
And tell me, what was your dream career when you grew up?
Oh, when I was younger, I wanted to be a stockbroker. Did not know what that was at the time, but I thought I used to always watch these financial programs on television, and you see stockbrokers out on the market and calling out numbers, and I thought that was really interesting, but I had no clue what it actually entailed. But as I grew, I started to realize that I'm not really into the finance type of world. And only in varsity actually did I realize that economics was something I was really passionate about, coupled with politics, and so I started exploring those interests. So stockbroking had to take a backseat very quickly.
And where did you start your career?
I started my career at Genesis Analytics. So I was a bursar with Genesis for about 3 years, through my honors year and 2 years of my master's degree in economics. So they sponsored that. And I was offered a job right after my studies. So I'm actually at the beginning of my career. This is my first job, and I've been at the company for almost 2 years now. 2 years at the end of February next year. Working as a consultant, working in economics, and still doing a little bit of political economy work.
And I believe you're also very involved in the reading project, the community project.
Yes. So I'm very passionate about a project I run called Wethu. Wethu is a reading program that helps teenagers read and have access to Black written books. I found when I came back to Johannesburg, having lived in Cape Town for a couple of years, that kids in my community weren't reading. So I did a bit of an inquiry, understanding why aren't you guys reading? And a lot of them said they weren't reading because they couldn't relate to books and they didn't have access to books about people who look like them. So characters in books never embodied who they were, and never spoke to who and the circumstances around that they live in. So I found that I had access to Black written literature, I think at the end of my high school career, and have since, read most of those books. And I thought, well, let's start a club with a couple of these kids where I get them a couple of these books and they start reading. So I went out and spoke to a couple of my friends at the time. I think I sent an email to about 7 friends telling them about this project. They sent it to more friends, and now I've got about 30 mentors and mentees in the program. So what happens is we give out books to kids, and each mentor then mentors a little mentee through a book, through the reading process. This weekend actually Hadithi just turned 1. And each of my kids have read about 5 books each, have improved their reading skills. They send me book reviews. So it's been a phenomenal process, a huge learning process for me, and really equipping them with stories about people who look like them. And I've seen the development and the growth in the past year, and it's been an amazing experience. Yeah.
Can you tell us what are your sources of inspiration?
Well, there's such a myriad of them. I like I said, I grew up quite closely with my grandmothers, and so I think that start there, that they are quite matriarchs in their own respects, and they've been a source of inspiration for me in just seeing how they live their lives. So they're quite simple people in the sort of broad sense of the word, but they are phenomenal at being mothers, at being aunts, at being grandparents. So those definitely are my source of inspiration. But I think much more broadly in my career, I've had access to good mentors, both in terms of mentors that I see and mentors that I've met, and mentors in the public space. So there's a woman called Sally Curran, who's a phenomenal mentor of mine and someone I look up to quite quite, broadly, women like my mother as well, women like Oprah Winfrey, women like Kanye Domo, and just I think in South Africa's public eye, we're beginning to see more women in business, particularly, which is interesting to me, who are inspirational not just in what they do in business, but what they do in communities. Yeah.
And tell me, what is driving you?
I'm driven by the idea of impact, and particularly impact in community. I'm driven by the fact that we can do work that is impactful in the spaces at which we exist. So I think it's a daily mantra of mine to be impactful, and to add value in every conversation, in every interaction that I have. So really, it's just about how do I couple impact with the value addition that I'm able to bring into any particular space that I exist in.
So Jabu, there's one more very important part of your work that we need to cover. And I believe that is about SAWIP,
Yes.
the South African Washington
International program. Yes. So SAWIP has been one of the most influential programs in my development as a young leader. It's a 7-month program where they select students from 5 universities in South Africa: University of Cape Town, UWC, Stellenbosch University, University of Pretoria, and UJ at the moment, where we are taken through a program that really teaches us how to be servant leaders and inspires us to be servant leaders. The program starts in South Africa, so we spend about 3 months going through a curriculum, spending about 3 to 4 days a week together, and really building a team and what it takes to build a team of leaders. Then the program takes students on a 6-week trip to the United States in Washington, D.C., where we are all put in different organizations to be interns. So I worked at the IFC at the time. And the DC experience is just about global exposure to a cosmopolitan city, and really opening your eyes up to possibilities, I think, is what it's about. And then the program comes back to South Africa, where we do a community engagement community engagement process. I remember in my year, we went to a community called Mannenberg in Cape Town, at a school where we were helping the grade 11s and matrics, I think, at the time in the school, with program around CV building or whatever the participants in that year do. So it's about servant leadership. And I think, if there's one program that has taught me to look beyond myself, it's definitely SAWIP. And SAWIP's ability to select a bunch of people, a bunch of students who are very different from each other, but at the end of experience, learn so much from each other, is a phenomenal process. And I think there's those opportunities that exist for young people in South Africa, and SAWIP is one of them. That investing in yourself is an important process. At the beginning of our careers, we are 100% human capital. And hopefully by the end of them, we are more financial capital than we are human capital. But investing in this human capital and expanding your knowledge and expanding how you understand the world to work is such an important process, and for any leader to go through. Yeah.
Now, Jabu, let's talk about leadership.
Yes.
What does the future of leadership mean to you?
In South Africa or broader?
I think in South Africa.
I think in South Africa, the future of leadership, in my utopia in South Africa at least, is about a sense of understanding community. So it's about leading, but leading in conjunction with, in collaboration with, the idea that this is a community-led process. I think great leadership is dispensable. I think you're not a great leader if you're indispensable, if you're not creating others who are better than you, and you're the only one who can do what you can do. That's not, for me at least, an indication of good leadership. So the future of leadership, for me, is community driven, and it's dispensable. It is easily replaceable with people just as competent, people just as great.
And tell me, when you speak to youngsters, when you speak to the future leaders, what is it you tell them they should focus on for building a future-proof career, if that's possible?
So I try as much as I can to instill a sense of impact-driven leadership with my kids. I call them my kids because that's how they feel sometimes. I try and instill a sense that what they do should always be not just about them, but should always be bigger than them. And trying to instill a sense of understanding that you're not created just for yourself, but you're created for the impact that you're able to have across your small community, across the world, across the country. So what I usually tell my kids is that what is it that you're doing today that will have an impact for others in the future, even tomorrow. I think also is to help them become more focused, not just in the academics, but to focus on one thing that they can solve today. I think we tend to look at our problems in bulk. And when we look at our problems in bulk, we're not able to see through them. So to focus and say, today, this is the goal. My father often says, why do tomorrow rather what you can do today? And so I've always sort of been driven by that, okay, I could do this today. There's enough time for me to finish and do this today. Why do it tomorrow? And so that sense of like, there's sense of urgency amongst my teens that I can do more today and I can have an impact today as much as I can have one tomorrow is really, really important to me.
And tell me, Jabu, if we talk about the future leader, what would you say are the qualities of the future leader? What are the enablers and what are the disablers?
Yeah, so perhaps three things that I would say are enablers. I think the first would be integrity. I think the future of leadership, especially in the age that we live in where transparency and information are so easily accessible. You can't hide anymore. There's social media. There's so many outlets where the truth just can come out. So integrity has become increasingly important in how people govern and how leaders continue. The second thing I think is confidence. And I think there's become quite a thin line between confidence and arrogance, but it's really just to find that line. I think I've seen the most successful leaders in my opinion are confident, have a sense of carry themselves with a sense of high level of integrity, but a high level of understanding who they are, very comfortable in their own skins. And I think that's what confidence is to me, is to be comfortable with the kind of person that you are. And I think the third thing is passion. And I think passion in the non sort of fluffy way, but a true sense of passion for the things that you are doing and the spaces that you are leading in. A sense that what you're doing, you could be an investment banker or a doctor, but the passion behind that determines how well you do at that particular job. Or you could be, a stay-at-home mother or whatever it is, but there's this high level of passion that comes in for you to be good at it. I think I was reading The Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes at the beginning of the year, and I thought, this is my year of yes, this is exciting. And one of the themes that comes out of the book is her passion that she has for producing and for writing. So she's written some of my favorite TV shows, Grey's Anatomy, How to Get Away with Murder, etc. But you can almost tell from how she writes that the passion is just coming out of the book. And I think it's so important that what we invest ourselves in and the work that we do, it comes with a sense of passion. So my three is definitely integrity, confidence, and passion.
And passion.
And the disablers. Yeah. Well, I guess it would be the opposite, right? So I think the biggest thing for me is arrogance, I think. And arrogance in the sense that you know what I spoke about earlier, that you don't think anybody can be as good or as capable as you. And you sort of build on that facade or build on that knowledge or that misnomer, I think is very, very dangerous for leadership. And I think it's a big cause of where some of our countries are in the world is leaders who just thought that they were arrogant and thought that they can't create or systems can't continue without them. I think the second thing is it's not a word, but it's just around the idea of a lack of service. So I'm a believer in servant leadership, and I think I've sort of spoken and highlighted that today. But the lack of service in what we do is really the beginning of our failure. When we fail to recognize how this is serving others and serving a greater purpose, and I think that's the beginning of the end, the beginning of the demise. I think in South Africa in particular, if I'm to point out, disablers, I think in South Africa, it's around the issues around transformation and growth. So what we will experience the country, and I mean, I'm speaking obviously as an economist, is that if we don't really and strategically deal with transformation in South Africa throughout the economy, we will find ourselves in a very difficult place. But that transformation has to somehow be coupled with growth, and growth that will lead to investments, that will lead to jobs, and jobs, I mean quality jobs that are stabilizing for people and their lives. So I think we have to sort of strike, I think, a balance and try to find a place where we can couple those two together. And I think as well there would be in that sort of triangle would be the idea that we also learn to govern. And govern, and what I mean by that is that we maintain the A level that our institutions are. So I think those, there's so many things that are disablers, but I think that if we can get it right for South Africa in transformation and which is equity, and couple that with growth, we're really headed for a good future.
So where would you see the levers of transformation in South Africa? Would you see them in business, in big business, in small business, in society? Which would you say are the most important aspects of transformation?
I think in South Africa, it's such a complex one, but I think it is definitely within big business. I don't think it is just government's role and responsibility to keep nudging business into transforming. I think they've introduced great measures. I think broad-based Black economic empowerment is a good tool to drive that. But I think there is a need for big business in particular to go beyond just compliance, to really start saying, well, our future, or rather our social license to operate, is determined by our makeup. Our ability to grow in South Africa is about creating diverse teams. So I think for me, it's about big business. I think there's lots going into small business, but I also think that there has to be, how do we move, for example, township businesses into the mainstream economy in Sandton? That's something that's important. We can't keep small businesses just small. How are we creating bigger empires? So, there's good work coming out, things like the jobs fund coming out of government in trying to enable small business. But I think now more than ever, there's a huge role for big business to come to the party. And I mean, it's an ongoing discussion and debate in South Africa about what that means. But I think for me, it's about moving beyond compliance and seeing that the license to operate in South Africa is determined by how well they continue to diversify and transform their businesses.
And Jabu, coming back to the disablers, is there any other disabler of future leadership that you would like to point out?
Another disabler. I've been thinking quite recently about global trends. And one of the biggest ones now we see with Brexit, Trump, and what's happening in Europe is this idea of nationalism and what that actually means. And I'm concerned about what globalization presented as a good thing, that's now obviously, people are beginning to question. And I think it's a lot because people want jobs, people want a good living. And I think a disabler is leaders who are unable to meet or to find society where they're at. So I'm not sure what the word is to sort of encompass that thought. But globally, we're beginning to see trends where there just seems to be a disconnect between those in power, those who lead, and the sort of grassroots, the ground at the ground level of people, just to put it in inverted commas. And I think that disconnect comes from ideas around we have to close our borders, we have to be more of an exclusionary society for us to prosper. And I mean, I'm concerned about that, and I'm concerned about how leaders are using that as political tools, or even businesses using that as a tool to advance its own agendas. So there's all those growing tensions in the world, and I think, having come from like a sort of classical economics teaching, is that we are almost better together as a world. I think things like world hunger shouldn't exist in 2017. How are we still talking about this? How is this still something that's happening? But I think it's that, and I think that's going to continue for as long as we don't sort of break down the silos that we exist in as countries. And it's up for debate, but that's some of my my concerns about where the world is at the moment.
Now, Jabu, you are mentoring a number of future leaders.
Yes.
Can you maybe share with us a success story or two?
Okay. One of my mentees, sorry, in April of this year, 2017, got an opportunity through our help and our assistance, to attend a 1 week workshop conference in Ghana through the Yale Young Leadership Program. So she is a very bright, very, very bright and intelligent young girl, and she got this opportunity, and she went to Ghana, came back with awesome and phenomenal stories about her experience there. And she's currently in the process of writing a book. She's a 16-year-old who is writing a book about, she changes this book every day. So she's writing 2 books almost now. One about a 16-year-old, so a book about a person who's similar to her, but also a book about a 25-year-old. So she was telling me over the weekend that, she's got this new book concept. So those are the kinds of things that for me are very motivational. Another story is one of my kids who never used to read. About a year ago, it's not something that she read for school. Was saying to me, I think in September this year, that the program has helped her, and she's increased her English mark by, I think, 3% over the last year, 3 to 5%. So it's not a huge leap, but it was significant for her to point it out and to say, I read more, I'm more interested in literature. And so those are the kinds of things that get me really energized and going about Hadithi. Yeah.
And tell me, Jabu, are there any role models of leadership that you would suggest future leaders should study, or maybe books about leadership?
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Malcolm Gladwell. So I've just finished reading his book called Blink. I've read Outliers, and I'm going to start reading David and Goliath pretty soon. But I think he's got a good way of speaking about and writing about leadership that's very different from the conventional. I've just also finished reading, I think beginning of this year, a book by Ta-Nehisi Coates called Between the World and Me. And it's not a typical leadership book. It's a book about race, actually. But it's an interesting way of thinking about how do we think about race, not just in America, but as people, and how do we lead from that point of understanding the other? So I think for me it was about understanding the other and continuing that way. I spoke about Shonda Rhimes and the Year of Yes. A book that I found completely inspirational is a book called Alive. It's about Winnie Mandela. It's a biographical book. And it's, again, not a typical sort of business school leadership book, but it's about her life and her journey. And I think it teaches so well about strength, character, and courage. And I think those are the key takeaways for me. Other interesting things that I follow is the Johannesburg Book of Review of Books. So I get like a newsletter every other week. Just an interesting blog, I suppose, that also teaches about African literature and about books in general. So yeah, definitely watch and listen to Malcolm Gladwell's Revisionist History. I think it's brilliant. I'm really into podcasts, so I listen to a lot of podcasts. That's one of my favorites.
So, Jabu, tell me, how can people get hold of you? Where can they connect with you?
I am available on LinkedIn as Jabulile Mpanza. Also on Instagram, so Instagram as J Mpanza, but also on Instagram as Hadithi Wethu. So if people want to get involved in the project, we're always looking for sponsors, book sponsors, new mentors, etc. Also available on email, so you can email me at jmpanza, JMPANZA @ymail.com. Not Gmail,
Okay.
ymail.com.
So, okay.
Yes.
So it's LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and email.
Yeah, so it's LinkedIn, Instagram. I'm not so good on Twitter, to be
Okay.
very honest. I have a Twitter account. I don't even know what my Twitter name is. I think I'm a ghost on Twitter. I just can't say anything intelligent in so little characters, I guess.
And tell us, is there a place where people can follow your thought leadership?
Not at the moment, but we are starting a blog as Hadithi Wethu, and we can definitely get involved in that.
Okay. And then, last but not least, is there one thing that you would really urge future leaders to look at, to implement in their own leadership?
Younger leaders, older leaders?
Younger leaders.
Younger leaders. I would push them to add value. That's really what's important to me. I would say I often say this to my teens, that be a valuable resource. Add value in every space that you exist in. So I would urge them to be valuable, to add value, and whatever that means, in different platforms and in different forums, but to be value adders. I think that's one of my sort of names on LinkedIn, that I'm a value adder, because I believe that strongly, and it's a mantra that I live up to on a daily basis. Yeah.
Well, Jabu, thank you so much for your inspiration. In fact, you're an inspiration, and you are helping us to build the future. You're helping us to build future leaders. You're doing great work, and I really want to thank you. I want to honor you, and I want to wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. It was great. Thank you for having me.